before we get started. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to use that Q&A feature in the bottom right-hand corner. And Grace, who is one of our recruiting assistants, will be able to answer those questions. Or you can send the message to her directly. We will have time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to send those and we'll get to those if we can. And if your question does not get answered today, you can go ahead and send an email to kearneycareers.ug@kearney.com. And someone from the recruiting team will go ahead and answer those questions for you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our panelists. Evan, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yep. My name is Evan Osterly. I am a senior business analyst out of our Chicago office. I'm actually in our Washington, D.C. office today. So if anyone's in D.C., it's a pretty ugly day here. But general practice and outside of consulting work, I'm involved in our social impact work, recruiting, our summer program, and also some of the mental health initiatives going on at the firm. And I will be walking through the case today along with Craig, who should be joining us shortly.
Claire, it looks like you're muted.
Yeah, I noticed. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. I went to undergrad at Cornell University and joined the firm last year. So I'm based out of the New York office in the general practice, kind of going to give you guys some quick tips about the case process. And I'm in the New York office as well right now. Not great weather here either. So we're 0 for 2 on weather, but maybe Sable will give us some good news about her weather.
Unfortunately not. I'm just in Philly, so not very far. Weather's fairly similar. But I graduated from Penn in 2020, joined Kearney last October, so it's been almost a year. At the firm, I'm involved in our International Women's Day event, the Tent Refugee Mentorship Program, and a lot of recruiting stuff. Also Student Lab, which is working with MBAs. And I'm very excited to be here. I'm going to help Claire give you some tips on case interviews and setting up for interviews generally.
Craig, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I need to unmute twice. Yeah, hey everybody, Craig Hubert. It sounds like the fun fact of the day is weather, which in the Boston area, it's pretty good. Fall is approaching, which is nice. But anyways, I'm a manager in our health practice. I've been with Kearney for just over 5 years now. Did my undergrad at the University of Massachusetts, got my MBA at Harvard Business School. So excited to be joining everybody, working through a mock case here with Evan, our stellar new interviewee. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to it.
So I'll tell you guys, I'll go through this slide. Basically, what the purpose of the case interview is to kind of simulate a complex business problem that you see once you actually join the firm. So there's kind of 3 key areas that we're really testing here. And the first is really just to evaluate your analytical skills. So are you able to look at a problem, structure an answer, and come with a structured response? The second is kind of testing your ability to deal with ambiguity and data overload. A lot of the times when you start on a new project at Kearney and frankly in any consulting role, you're going to get a lot of data from a lot of different sources and have to synthesize that in a way that makes sense to you and to the client. So this part of the case process is extremely accurate to what you will actually see in a consulting role. And the final piece is to kind of assess the candidate's poise and communication skills. Obviously, a big part of being a consultant is interacting with clients and communicating some of those data and analytical issues that I've just discussed. So really what we're trying to test is if you're going to be able to do that once you actually join the firm. And you're not necessarily going to be perfect at it to start, but it's a good way to see if you're able to have that foundation and then build upon it once you start at the firm.
All right, so I think we've got our example case here. Awesome, and I'll quickly take the screen. Awesome. All right, cool. Yeah, so we've got our case now. So I'll quickly run through this. I've got Evan here, to work it through. We'll go through, kind of all the sections and pretend as close as we can that this is kind of a real, real life interview. Awesome. So Evan, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us today. Really excited to go through a case with you. It's a real example. We built it off one of our client teams here. So just, really excited, and let's have some fun and work through the case together.
Sounds great. Excited to work through it.
Awesome. Yeah, so here's a bit of the context. So our client's a local coffee roaster. They're pretty close to the local business school. They're the largest coffee shop around. Measured by several different attributes, and pretty prominent in our local town here. So 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, there was a pretty large E. coli outbreak at the cafeteria of this business school, which as you can imagine, has sort of driven students off campus, to our coffee roastery. But kind of paradoxically, our coffee roaster has seen a decrease in their profit. So the coffee roaster is a local landmark in town. This mark of the decreased profitability, even though the volumes are going up, has really sort of spooked them, and they've reached out to Kearney to really try to help them with their situation. There's a couple questions that we're looking to answer today. The first is, what are the drivers of this poor profitability? And the second, is once we have those drivers of the poor profitability, how might we want to, think about taking steps to address the issue and really get them back on track?
Got it. Great. Okay. So just to make sure that I understand here. So our client is local roasters, and they're a local coffee shop, and there was this E. coli outbreak in the cafeteria on campus, and they've seen an increase in business, but a decrease in profitability. Is that kind of what we're working with here?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay, great. Do you mind if I ask some clarifying questions?
Yeah, of course.
Great. So are there do we have any competitors as far as coffee shops go?
There are a few competitors, but our local roaster is by far kind of the biggest one. Captures sort of most of the business, is closest to the business school.
Got it. And have we seen any open recently that we might be concerned about or anything like that?
We have not seen any open recently.
Okay, got it. No, that's helpful. And do we know for our client what products do they sell? Is it just coffee, or do they have other products as well?
They do have some other products. I think, as imagined, they sell things like, I think, smoothies and sandwiches and a whole variety of different coffee types.
Sure. Great. And so I assume once we get into the case, we'll have more data on some of these financials. So do you mind if I take a minute to kind of gather my thoughts here and put together a framework?
Yeah, no, not at all.
Awesome. So for everyone on the call, we encourage you to also take a minute or two and put together the framework that you think makes sense for this case. And then in about 90 seconds, we'll come back together and I'll share mine, and you can see how it stacks up against yours. And just to reiterate what Caroline said, if you do have any questions as we're going through the case, feel free to send them, and then we will answer them during our debrief at the end. Greg, do you want to go back one? There's a question in the chat. Okay. I think I'm ready to walk you through my framework if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds great.
Great. So, this is an issue of profitability. So the way that I'm thinking about it is kind of our standard profitability framework. So in terms of profit, you have revenue minus cost. And so I've put together two buckets thinking about local roasters. Thinking through the revenue bucket, you have the number of units sold and what the cost per unit is. So if we're thinking of cups of coffee, then you might have 4,000 cups of coffee sold, and they might have some different sizes. So they might have small, medium, large cups of coffee. You can probably tell I'm not a coffee drinker because I know that that's not what coffee is actually called. And then on the other side, you have cost. And so cost, you have units sold and cost per unit. So either we've seen a decrease in revenue or an increase in cost. And based on the fact that there's been increased traffic to the store, my initial hypothesis would be that there's been some kind of increase in cost rather than a decrease in revenue, but definitely want to explore some more data there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is, so I think this is a good framework and the right place to start. Maybe a question as we get into it, right? Like, we mentioned earlier that they sell some other products, right? So like, I know you mentioned maybe it's a shift in, I don't know, coffee price, but, might there be other, something else that could have happened?
Yeah, no, that's interesting too, because since it was the cafeteria, maybe people are buying more food and that's having an impact. So that makes sense. So I guess do we have some kind of data maybe on the profitability, like just thinking of profitability metrics, maybe margin for some of their key products? Coffee, you mentioned sandwiches and smoothies. Are those ones we want to look at too?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. In fact, we do have some information. So on our example here, we just got a pretty simple chart of the the three different product lines. I think as you mentioned, maybe there's small, medium, large, or whatever Starbucks is going by these days. But we'll simplify it just to have three items here. So we've got the current selling price, what the cost of goods sold are, and just looking for a bit of a quick calculation here to see if we can't get the gross margin for each of these.
Got it. Okay, so we've got coffee. See why I mentioned smoothies and sandwiches now when I asked earlier, and then sales price and COGS for each of them. So gross margin is simply a percentage that takes sales minus COGS over COGS. Is that correct? Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. So if I'm starting with coffee here, and I'll just talk you through my calculations, and it's difficult since we're on video and you can't see me working through it. So I'll try to keep you engaged. So we've got $3 minus 60 cents is $2.40 over $3. So that's 80%. It's a pretty simple one there. And then we've got smoothies. 5 minus 2 is 3 over 5. That's going to be 60% profitability there. And then on sandwiches, we've got 8 minus $6.80. That's $1.20 divided by 8. That one's a little trickier. If I divide the top and bottom by 4, that's going to be 30 cents over $2. And then I can divide those both by 2, and I get 15 cents over $1. So 15%. So I've got 80%, 60%, and 15%. How do those numbers sound?
Oh, neat. No, they look great. Yeah, thanks for working through the math there, Evan. Definitely appreciate the logic and walking me through how you thought about each of these. Okay, so definitely different profitabilities across the different product lines, right? So maybe something going on there. So now that we've got gross margin, I'm wondering if we take our next step here and see where we go with the next we go with the case.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. Sandwiches have this really low profitability, and we were thinking earlier, maybe more people are buying food. Do we have any information on the volume that was sold, maybe like a before and after the E. coli breakout?
Yeah, we do have that.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. So our next exhibit here, I think, to your point, we've got a little before and after view of volumes for each of these, but also sale price. So I think for this one, as you see, the volumes have shifted, but maybe we can calculate maybe revenue for each of these, before the E. coli outbreak and then afterwards.
Sure. And just a quick question.
Sure.
I'm sure they sell more products. So is our scope limited to these 3 products for the purpose of this case?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, as you mentioned, they probably sell some other things, but we'll keep it focused and just say they sell these 3.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
all right. So I will just work through this math. Starting with coffee for before the outbreak, we've got 3 times 18,000. So 3 times 10,000 is 30,000. 3 times 8,000 is 24. So 54,000 in coffee sales. That was the 2 weeks before the E. coli breakout. Smoothies, we've got 5 times 6,300. 5 times 6,000 is 30,000. 5 times 300 is 1.5 thousand. So that's 31,500. And then 8 times 6, that's 48,000. So putting these all together, we've got 50,000, 30,000, 40,000. That nets out to 120,000. And then we've got 8,000, 4,000, 1,500. That's another 13.5. So I've got 133,500 for before. And then after, we've got 3 times 16,500. So I'm just going to take 3 times 1.5 thousand, since that's the difference. And that's 4.5 thousand. So 54 minus 4.5 thousand is 49,500. Smoothies, that is a tougher number there. So 5 times 2450. I'm just going to take 2450, multiply it by 10. That gives 24,500. Divide that by 2. So 12.25 thousand. And then 8 times 13.5. That would be, let's see, 8. Let me go back actually and just do the change again. So it's 7.5 thousand more. 8 times 7.5. 8 times 7 is 56. 8 times half is 4. So 60,000 increase plus the original 48 is 108,000. So if I put these together, 108 plus 49 plus 12, that's going to give me 120 plus 49, 159, 169 rather, plus 0.75, 169.75 thousand.
Yeah, no, thanks for working through all of those. Definitely quite a lot of calculations. Again, appreciate the detail and working through and getting all these sorted. Okay, great. So now we've got some gross margin for each of these, each of our sandwiches. We've got our total revenue before and after the pandemic. I think, kind of maybe the last piece here that maybe we'll need some help with and pulling together is talking maybe a bit about the fixed costs or the total cost position. So I think remembering back to your, the cost of goods sold to those variable costs, let me share with you a bit of the fixed costs, and let's see, what we can sort out from here. So here are the fixed costs, again, before and after. For the E. coli outbreak, just maybe we need to combine those, reflecting back on the previous analysis, and see what our total cost position is.
Okay, these are some tricky numbers here. This is some real math we've got. Okay, I'm going to start out by working through the fixed costs real quick. So if I start with the before period, and I'm going to just add the top and bottom first to try to make these numbers a little cleaner, since I see the 10 and the 40. So that's 5950. And then if I'm adding 1850 to that, that becomes, I can add the 50 and get to 6,000. Another 1,800 is 7,800 plus 2,300. So 10,300 on the fixed costs for before. After, going from top to bottom here, we've got 5,790 from these first two. add another 2,500, that gives us 8,290 plus 13,860. So we've got 8,000 plus 13, that's 22. Once we get the 500 plus 800, 2,290 plus 60, 22,150 in fixed costs for the 2-week period after the breakout.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so then we need the variable cost. So let's see. I have the volume in units before and after, and then in the original part for margin, we did COGS, and fortunately, I've got my math all organized on my page here, so easy to find all these numbers as I'm going through. So I'm just going to bring these down, and I'll start with before. So we've got 18,000 units of coffee sold times 60 cents in COGS. So if I start with 10,000 times 60 cents, that's 6,000. 8,000 times 60 cents is 4,800. So that gives me 10,800 in variable cost for coffee. Smoothies, a little simpler. We've got 6.3 thousand times $2. That's just 12,600. Sandwiches, we've got 6,000 times $6.8. That's big cost of goods sold. So we've got 6 times 6 is 36, and then 6 times 0.8 is 4.8. So that gives us 40,800. So if we add those up, we've got 10, 12, 40, 62 plus 8, 6, 8, that's 22.2. So 62 plus 2.2 is 64,200. And then if we bring in our fixed cost from before, that's 74,500 in total cost for the 2 weeks before the outbreak. And then
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I think a ton of detailed calculations there. Okay, so then I think you're going to go try to bring it home for the after outbreak cost position.
Yes. So just follow the same path. We bring down our volumes: 16,500, 2450, and 13,500. These are some tough numbers here again. 16,500.
Feel free to round if it makes it easier.
Okay. Yeah. If I just did 16,500 times half, or you could also do 17,000 times 0.6. Either of those be okay. Either way, it's going to come out to around about 10,000. 10,000 in cost, and then 2450 times 2. I'll round that off to 5,000, so we're at 15,000, and then 13,500 times 6.8. Man, so maybe I'll just say 13,000 times 7 roughly, and go up with one and down the other, and so that'll give me 91,000 in total cost for sandwiches in the 2 weeks after. So 10 plus 5 plus 91, that gives me 106. And if I'm thinking back to how I rounded down on the first one, I rounded up on the second, and kind of both on the third. So it should be in roughly the ballpark. So if I take that 106 and add it to 22,150, should hopefully be around 128,000.
There you go. Yeah, 100 and we'll flip the page here, but 128,000, 750. So, appreciate the detailed math, walking me through it. I think your use of rounding, I think was good, and definitely, no worries doing that, just to make it simpler in a non-calculator friendly world.
Great.
Okay, great. So now we've got to, you've organized the total cost. We've got our revenue. We've got it before and we've got it after. So let's maybe bring it home and answer a few questions. That start putting, getting to our true cost position here. So, the first is, let's think about, we've got net profit. So if we can get, straight to the bottom line before the outbreak, the bottom line after the outbreak, the relative margins for both their periods. And then, I think we've got enough info, I think we've previously done to see if there's, maybe a cause for what this, what may have happened here.
Yeah. Okay. So, we've got revenue and costs here. So, if we start with before 133,500 minus 74,500, so we can wipe out those halves, and it's 59,000 in profit for the 2 weeks before. After, we've got 169.75, and then 128.75 was the number you gave. So that's 41,000. So then if we take profit margin, we're just going to basically be taking the profit over the revenue. So 59 over 133.5, those are tricky numbers again. So, if we say 60 over 130, that's not quite half, but around 45%, I think. Is that okay rounding there?
Yeah, perfect to round.
Awesome, perfect. And then 41 over 169.75, it's roughly a quarter. It's going to be a little bit less than 25%, but around 25%. We can still definitely tell the difference between the two. So, and then potential reasons why the sales volume for smoothies would decrease. Well, I think, the sandwiches are food, and like some people might consider smoothies food, but if people are going for a real meal, they could definitely be buying sandwiches. So I guess that's part of it. And then I guess the other thing that I'd be thinking about is that if there are more people coming for sandwiches, maybe some of your typical smoothie buyers are going to go elsewhere for smoothies because the line's too long.
Yeah, no, I think those are both good, good suggestions on the smoothie front. I'm definitely guilty of having a smoothie instead of a sandwich on many occasions, so it makes sense. They're decent substitutes. All right, so we've got a view on profitability here, which I think is great. We've got a lot of data. I think the next thing, right? So now we've sort of wrapped up our our larger quant portion of the case. It's time to put our heads together and start thinking about how we might want to start forming a recommendation for our client. So I'm wondering, from the information we have thus far, right? Like, what would maybe be the 3 drivers, if we wanted to say, drivers of this decrease in profitability?
Sure. Yeah. So, let's see. I'm just brainstorming here. So, obviously we know that there's lower margin on the sandwiches, and so even though you've got a higher volume there, you've got increasing costs with it. So that'd be number one, definitely, is the margin for the sandwiches and the significantly increased volume there. The second piece is probably what we just talked about, of the volume from the sandwiches is affecting the sales for the more profitable products. And then let's see, just going back through here. I guess the other thing I noticed is that the fixed costs are significantly increased for the 2-week period after the E. coli breakout. So, the labor's significantly up and marketing is significantly up. So maybe there's just more of these costs associated with sandwiches, fixed costs associated with sandwiches, in addition to the higher variable costs.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great ideas. I think you've brainstormed there. Okay, so now that we think we've got our potential drivers of the profitability, let's how might we want to think about, and maybe circle back to our original framework, right? Like, now that we've identified the problems, we know what the root cause is. We see sandwiches go up; they're much less profitable than smoothies and coffee. How might we want to bundle a few recommendations together, or suggestions for our client to move forward?
Yeah. Do you mind if I just take a quick second to gather my thoughts here?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Okay. So just to do a quick recap, we took a look at all of the financial metrics associated with coffee, smoothies, and sandwiches. And what we found is that there's a significantly increased volume in sandwiches that are associated with lower profitability. That is driving the overall profitability down, as it's also affecting the sales for the other products, potentially because of longer lines, and also we've got increased fixed costs associated. And so as I'm thinking through what the client should do now that we know what is affecting kind of this this issue, I guess a couple thoughts here. One would be to just attack the profitability of sandwiches and raise the prices. If we're only at a 15% margin, then maybe we should be selling sandwiches closer to the price that would be associated with the margin for our other more profitable products. I guess some of the other ways to attack this in terms of lowering costs, I want to figure out like what is driving up those labor and marketing costs so high the last 2 weeks, so much higher than the previous 2 weeks. Is it that much more difficult to make sandwiches, and how does that tie into marketing? So definitely want to explore the fixed costs. Also, just take a look at who's supplying our sandwiches, and why is the variable cost so high as well. And then just thinking about some things outside of our basic profitability framework. Maybe we can bundle the sandwiches with smoothies or coffee, and try to drive the volume back up in some of those other buckets as people buy more sandwiches. Maybe try different promotions, run some promos maybe on coffee or smoothies during like off volume hours. So people are obviously going to get coffee like early in the morning. Run coffee promotions throughout the day. Yeah, those are kind of my main thoughts. So.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks, Evan. Really appreciate you working through the case with me this afternoon. I think we had a lot of good dialogue and some challenging calculations for you to work through there. But yeah, thanks for working through. All right. Yeah. So I guess with that, we've moved through the case. I think Evan, thanks for entertaining my crazy calculation laden case here. I guess maybe we'll open it up for a quick debrief. I'm assuming a few questions have come through the chat. Caroline, if you want to feed those to us and we can take them. But I'm just gonna, cold call Claire. Yeah, I don't know. Feedback for Evan as he went through the case.
I'm giving feedback.
Sure, we've got a debrief. It's fine.
Oh, I'm so excited. So obviously, Evan did a great job handling the numbers. Those were some difficult numbers in this case, and Evan blew through them and really showed us his analytical horsepower. But one thing that I would say, and this is partly due to the fact that he wasn't able to show his paper and his calculations, but when I was going through this process virtually, I would write my I would do two things. First of all, I'm not as good at Evan as doing that mental math. So I would literally be during my call, can I have 2 minutes? Can I have a minute to do this math? And then I would sit down and I would write the math on a piece of paper and actually take the time to calculate it for a second, because I'm not as good as Evan at this. And after I finished that process, I would literally in the interview be like, okay, so this is how I did the math. And this is my notes from a client call, but it would be actual, numbers of me doing it. And I would explain how I did it. And that way it could be super crystal clear how I got to the numbers. So that's just a general tip. Obviously, Evan has that analytical horsepower down, but that's something I would recommend. And I think Evan also did a great job of, at the beginning, if you guys remember, Craig kind of described what the case was. And then Evan came back with, okay, this is what you said to me, right? He verified that was in fact what the case was about. And that's something that is really important in consulting. Every time you get any sort of problem that's handed to you, you really should take the time to clarify it. So that transcends just this case, which is pretty awesome. And I loved, okay, one other thing that I loved Evan did, and I'll stop with my feedback, my positive feedback mostly, was when he said, so I think it's small, medium, and large, but I'm not a coffee drinker, because a great idea for these cases is to add a personal aspect. Like sometimes you're going to get a case about a product or something that you know nothing about, and it's kind of fun and relatable to be like, okay, like I've never drank coffee in my life, but you know, I think it's a small, medium, and large. Or if you avidly drink coffee, you can be like, okay, I love coffee, like venti, grande, and tall, right? Like, so I thought that was a great addition and something I would highly recommend as a way to kind of set yourself apart in these cases.
Great.
I
Thank you, everyone.
actually have not ever drank coffee before, so that was true. Just so everyone knows.
Meanwhile, I'm on my like 10th venti of the day, so.
Yeah, Claire, I thought you were just on brand through this, you know, sipping coffee throughout. I was like, that's very, very good.
Great. Well, we do have a bunch of questions that have come through. So maybe we can go through a couple of these and then go through some tips and tricks. So first question being, with virtual case interviews, will our interviewer share slides with that information like we saw today?
Yeah, I guess I can take this one. I typically have pages that I'll share, you know, whether they be calculations or, you know, market sizing map or, you know, something else. Just, you know, we would do it in person, so I think that it's important to do it virtually, but it'll be dependent on the interviewer. I would expect to see some sort of, you know, page be shared.
Awesome. And then Craig, we can direct this one at you too.
Sure.
So is it okay to ask for hints during the interview process in case we're too nervous and we forget some of the formulas or some numbers?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's okay. I would either ask for maybe clarification if you don't know a point, or, you know, if it's the profitability formula, I think as, you know, Evan laid out, right, you know, hey, gross margin is, you know, revenue minus COGS divided by revenue. If that wasn't right, and I was like, oh no, I actually wanted you to, I don't know, calculate net, right? Like you should include, you know, SG&A and, you know, take out a few things. I think your interviewer will interject. And then also, I think if you're going kind of, you know, wildly off track, you know, the Kearney interviewer will step in, right? Like, you know, we're here having a discussion. We want to have, you know, we enjoy doing cases, we enjoy talking about them, and we kind of want everybody to, you know, to be as successful as possible. So I don't know that I would say, you know, just straight ask for a tip or a hint, but, you know, be clear, be willing to talk through your logic, and if things are going, you know, down a path that, you know, maybe is a red herring, you know, take the feedback from the interviewer and you know, just keep moving.
Great, thank you.
I would just add, like, if you really are like just at a dead end, that is, like, definitely say something. The interviewer is your friend. You know, you're working with them to solve the case, and if you're stuck and you don't voice it, they can't help you. But I think unless you're like truly at a dead end, everything that Craig said is spot on. Like you're still working through the case, and so, if you just do get totally stumped, and I've been there, that's when you need to just like take a step back with the interviewer and reset. But that's all I wanted to add.
Thanks. And I think
yeah,
we're gonna
that's
ask one.
A great add.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say great add.
I think we can add one more question and then we can continue to go through some tips and tricks. So are the actual case interviews the same level of difficulty, or has this one just been adjusted for clarity's sake of a demonstration?
Is this me again?
It can be anyone. Claire, Sable, have your cases been this hard? How's your prep gone?
Sable, go.
Okay, I think they're generally easier than this, but I do think it's good practicing with harder cases. Actually, when I was casing at Kearney, like my case in my final round interview, one of them was way harder than anything I'd ever done before. And that was like, it's kind of nerve-wracking when you've like come in and you've like done a bunch of cases and you feel confident, and then you get a case that's like very different than the like standard case. And part of that is because a lot of like we're writing our own. So they vary and they're not like right out of a book. But it's definitely, I think it's good to practice hard cases and then be surprised when they're easier.
Yeah, I mean, I have given and done a lot of cases, and that is like definitely top 5%, if not top 1% math in that case. If you can do the math in that case, you can probably do the math in any case interview that you're going to get. So, you know, I think there are different ways cases can be challenging. That one was very quantitatively challenging. There are other cases that will be much more qualitatively challenging, like a profitability framework is fairly straightforward. So like you could have cases where you need to brainstorm a lot more and think through the problem, and that's a different kind of hard, but you're not going to get much more difficult math than that.
Great, thank you. Craig, do you want to go to the next page, please?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so this is me. I think I went through a few of these, but these are some questions that we kind of are asking and thinking about while our interviewers are interviewing. And I think Evan obviously demonstrated a lot of these. I talked about the horsepower that he had analytically earlier, which was pretty fantastic. And the fact that he got through that was awesome. And as I said about the math, you know, you can take a few seconds to do that. You don't have to do that out loud, but I think doing it out loud can be a great example as well. And he obviously asked insightful and clarifying questions throughout, you know, making sure he was going on the right path and doing that. And in terms of thinking creatively, one example was when he was talking about the products themselves. He made sure that, you know, we only mentioned a few products that this coffee shop made, but Evan said, you know, they probably make more than 3 products, right? I think that demonstrates that he's kind of thinking outside the box and not just confining himself to the case itself. So I'll pass it off to Sable to discuss some of the other best practices.
Okay, so these.
Sorry, Craig, can you go to the next page? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. These are more just like general best practices for all your interviews, including non-case interviews. And I think this really gets at like what we would think about. We want to make sure we can put you in front of a client. And so if you're going to be on a client call, we want to make sure you know how to present yourself in a professional way, including virtually, because that's going to end up being a fair amount of the job. And so this really gets down to like, you want to set up your space and have a good background. You really want to like communicate with your roommates if you're living with other people to be like, I have an interview now, like I need to make sure it's quiet. So just make sure you have like a good space to work in. And you want to dress professionally, and for the most part, just act like it was an in-person interview. Like really prepare the same way you would. But it's kind of easier in a way because you are in your room, so that's kind of more comfortable. But you definitely have to make like adjustments. Like I have a very hard time like staring at the camera versus the screen. So that's a really good thing to do because you look like you're actually looking at the person. Whereas if you're actually looking at the image of them, you come across as if you're looking like down. So that's a good trick. I think that pretty much covers the page. And then this is just highlighting, like, it really helps to take notes during your case interviews. If you want to practice ahead of time, like when you're practicing cases, how to take really like shorthand notes, it definitely comes in useful. Like it helps me a lot with my cases, like with actual work projects when I'm getting assignments and I'm able to write things down quickly. Because if you're spelling out every word or like it helps to have like your own kind of shorthand so you can take quick notes and then use them throughout the case.
Awesome, thanks, Abel. Maybe with that, let's just quickly jump to the final logistics page here. I think, Carolyn, you've got this one.
Great, thank you. So thank you to our panelists today, really appreciate it. No, we're running a minute or two over, so just some last minute dates For those that have applied for our full-time business analyst position, you will be hearing from us in the next couple days on whether or not you've been passed to first round interviews, which will be September 22nd to September 28th, and final rounds will be on October 1st. For those of you that are interested in our summer business analyst internship program, the deadline to apply for that is Sunday, October 3rd at 11:59 p.m. Central Time, and interviews for that will be the week of October 11th. We know there were a lot of questions today, so if your question was not answered, feel free to send a note to kearneycareers.ug@kearney.com, and we'll go ahead and get those questions answered for you. So again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for joining us, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.